It was one of those evenings when the city lights shimmered against the wet pavement after a sudden rainfall, leaving the world glistening as if washed clean. Inside a luxurious five-star restaurant, chandeliers sparkled like falling stars, the sound of soft jazz flowing through the hall. Guests laughed, clinked glasses, and discussed business, but one man stood in the shadows of service, wearing a black and white waiter's uniform, his hair tied neatly back, his hands calloused from long hours of work. His name was Armin, a single father who had learned that life never gave what one wanted, it only gave what one earned through pain, sacrifice, and relentless perseverance. Armin moved swiftly between tables, serving champagne, taking orders, and bowing politely when the guests barely acknowledged him. Yet, behind the quietness of his eyes, there was a depth, a story untold. He had been a dreamer once, a dancer who believed the stage belonged to him, until life crushed that dream with responsibilities he never expected. His wife had left years ago, leaving behind only a baby daughter and a note of regret. From that day, his every step was for his little girl, Ira, who was now 7, waiting at home with her books and drawings. But tonight was different. Tonight the restaurant was buzzing for a particular reason. The owner of a massive conglomerate, the ruthless billionaire CEO, Cameron Shaw, had rented the entire hall for his daughter's birthday celebration. Cameron was a man of iron, known for his pride, his power, and his merciless business tactics. People bowed their heads when he entered, not out of respect but fear. Yet, behind his wealth and command, there was one wound he could never heal, his daughter. Mira, Cameron's only child, was in her 20s. Years ago, an accident had left her face and parts of her body scarred by burns. Since then, she had lived hidden from the world, avoiding cameras, events, and strangers. Cameron had tried everything, surgeries, therapies, even offers of fortune to doctors abroad, but nothing could erase the scars, neither from her skin nor from her heart. On her birthdays, he threw grand celebrations, but Mira rarely smiled, never danced, and always sat quietly in a corner, isolated in her own pain. Armin had heard about her from the other staff. They whispered with pity but also with fear. The poor girl, but her father is scarier than the scars, one waiter muttered. Armin said nothing. He simply kept working, his eyes steady, his movements silent. When Mira arrived that evening, dressed in a long silver gown, her hair cascading down one side to cover part of her face, the hall seemed to fall into a hush. She was beautiful, undeniably so, but her beauty was one that carried sorrow, a quiet fragility. Guests greeted her politely, but few held her gaze. She sat at a table near the stage, her eyes drifting toward the band, her fingers tapping lightly to the rhythm of the song. Armin noticed her, not the scars but the loneliness. He recognized it, because loneliness had lived with him too, like an invisible shadow. He continued serving, but his heart tugged when he saw her stare at the dance floor as couples swayed under the lights, her lips pressed together as if holding back an ache. The night went on, speeches were made, laughter echoed, gifts piled up like mountains of glittering paper, but Mira remained untouched by joy. Cameron watched her, frustration in his eyes, his jaw tight. He had given her everything, money, luxury, protection, yet he couldn't give her happiness. Pride burned in him like a curse. Then the band began to play a song, soft and slow, filled with aching melody. The lights dimmed, and couples moved gracefully, dresses flowing, suits sharp, as though the world were choreographed. Perfection. Mira lowered her gaze, ready to disappear deeper into herself, when a voice came from her side. "Would you like to dance?" She looked up, startled. It was Armin, the waiter. His tray was empty, his eyes steady, his tone gentle, unshaken by the barrier of status that separated them. At first, she froze. No one had asked her that in years. She wanted to refuse, to retreat behind her scars, but something in his voice, earnest, unpretentious, human, broke through her defenses. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her hand in his. Gasps rippled through the hall. The billionaire's scarred daughter, stepping onto the floor with a waiter. Whispers began instantly, sharp as knives. Cameron's eyes widened, his pride inflamed. But before he could move, before he could stop it, Armin led Mira to the center of the dance floor. The music wrapped around them like a secret. Armin's hand was steady against hers, his steps guiding, patient. Mira trembled at first, uncertain, but then the rhythm carried her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel the joy of movement, the freedom of letting go. Her lips parted, and a soft, fragile smile bloomed across her face. Her scars shimmered in the light, visible to all, but in that moment, they no longer defined her. What defined her was the way she glided across the floor, her laughter like a melody returning after years of silence. Armin didn't look at her with pity, nor with discomfort. He looked at her as though she was whole, as though she was simply a woman dancing. Cameron's fists clenched at the sight. His pride screamed, how could a mere waiter dare to touch his daughter, to bring her into the center of everyone's eyes? Yet, as the song deepened, his anger faltered. He saw something he hadn't seen in years, his daughter smiling. Tears burned in his eyes, but his pride fought them back. The guests kept watching, some with awe, some with disdain, but the world faded for Mira. For those few minutes, it was just her and Armin, her feet moving as though she had been waiting all her life for this dance. The scars no longer mattered, the stares no longer pierced her. She was alive, radiant. When the song ended, the hall erupted in an uncertain silence. Then, slowly, someone clapped. Then another, until the hall filled with applause, not for perfection, not for beauty without flaw, but for courage, for the return of a light long hidden. Mira blushed, her eyes shining with tears, and Armin bowed gently, releasing her hand. Cameron stood still, his chest heavy. He wanted to rage, to shout, to order Armin out, but the truth had struck him harder than pride ever could. He had tried to buy happiness, to hide shame, to control fate. Yet, in a single dance, a man with nothing but sincerity had given his daughter more than all his wealth could. He realized his pride had been his prison, and his daughter had been locked inside it with him. Later that night, when the guests had left, Cameron approached Armin. The waiter straightened, expecting anger, perhaps even dismissal. But Cameron's voice was low, rough, breaking. You gave her what I could not, he said. You gave her back herself. Armin said nothing, only bowed. Mira, standing nearby, looked at her father with eyes that pleaded not for riches, not for freedom, but simply for acceptance. For the first time, Cameron reached out and touched her cheek gently, unflinching at the scars. She broke into sobs, falling into his embrace. The world had always told Cameron that scars were weakness, something to hide. But that night, watching his daughter dance with a simple man, he learned the truth, that scars were not the end of beauty, but the beginning of strength. Armin returned home late, his body tired, but his heart lighter than it had been in years. Ira, his little daughter, ran into his arms, asking about his day. He kissed her hair and whispered, one day, my love, you'll know, sometimes one dance can change everything. And somewhere in a mansion, Mira lay in bed, her heart still echoing with music, her lips curved in a smile that had been lost for so long. Her scars remained, but her spirit was free. That night, pride was broken, scars were healed, and two hearts that had carried their own burdens found a moment of grace under the same song. And though the world would forget, those who lived it never would.